Have you ever felt like you're constantly fighting yourself in relationships? Like one part of you desperately wants connection, warmth, and safety, but another part panics the moment someone gets too close. Hi, I'm Jim Rohn, and in this video, we're diving deep into what might be the most misunderstood attachment style, the fearful avoidant. Also known as disorganized attachment, this style is the emotional equivalent of slamming the gas and brake at the same time. Here's the truth most people don't talk about. Being fearful avoidant isn't just hard on your relationships, it's exhausting for the person living inside it. You're constantly caught in an emotional tug-of-war between wanting love and fearing it. You overgive, hoping to be accepted, then push people away when you feel too exposed. You tell yourself you're too much, then fear you're not enough. And it's not because you're broken. It's because somewhere in your past, closeness meant pain. So now, even when you find someone safe, your nervous system says, danger. In today's video, I'm going to walk you through what really makes this attachment style so hard to live with, and more importantly, what you can start doing to heal from it. We'll unpack why the push-pull dynamic keeps happening, how shame fuels the cycle, and how you can begin building emotional safety from the inside out. So whether you're the one with a fearful avoidant pattern or you love someone who is stick around, this video will help you understand the internal chaos behind the mixed signals and offer steps towards stability, clarity, and connection. If you're ready to stop feeling like you're your own worst enemy in love, hit subscribe, tap the bell, and let's dive into the truth behind fearful avoidance and the freedom waiting on the other side. Let's start with the core of what makes being fearful avoidant so painfully complicated. Emotional intimacy feels unsafe. Even though someone with this attachment style may long for love, genuine closeness, loyalty, and deep connection the moment they start to feel it, alarm bells go off in their nervous system. It's not that they don't want intimacy, it's that their body and subconscious mind associate closeness with pain. Most fearful avoidants didn't grow up with consistent emotional safety. Maybe one parent was warm one minute and critical the next. Or maybe they were punished for having needs, ignored when they cried, or even praised only when they suppressed emotion. Over time, these early emotional experiences created a blueprint. Closeness means instability, vulnerability means danger. And now as adults, those same people find themselves torn between two very strong instincts: reach for connection and run for cover. Let me give you a real example. One of my clients, we'll call her Kayla, started dating someone she truly liked, someone kind, steady, and emotionally available. In the beginning, she was all in, texting every day, sharing childhood stories, talking about the future. But the moment he told her, "I think I'm really falling for you," she felt her chest tighten. Her response wasn't joy, it was panic. And she started pulling away. Not because she didn't feel the same, but because her body interpreted that intimacy as a threat. Fearful avoidants don't play games on purpose. Their mixed signals come from mixed wiring. One minute they want to be held. The next they're pushing their partner away or going quiet for days. Inside they feel torn and exhausted because they don't understand why they can't just let love in and keep it. This internal battle creates what we call the push-pull cycle. They move toward closeness, get triggered, pull back, feel guilt or shame for retreating, and then try to reconnect, only to repeat the pattern. It's like living on an emotional seesaw that never touches solid ground. But here's the thing, this pattern isn't hopeless. It's learned, and anything learned can be unlearned. Recognizing that fearful avoidance isn't a character flaw but a survival strategy is the first step toward healing. And once you begin to identify what safety feels like, not just intellectually, but somatically, you can begin to untangle the wires that make love feel like danger. And that's what we're here to unpack together. One of the most painful and confusing patterns of the fearful avoidant is the push-pull dynamic. It can make even the most loving, well-intentioned relationships feel chaotic, unpredictable, and emotionally draining. What's tough is that this isn't just a relationship issue, it's an internal battle that plays out between their heart and their fear. Here's how it works. Fearful avoidants tend to be highly sensitive to emotional cues. When they meet someone who feels safe, who offers real connection, they lean in. And in those moments, it's real. They aren't faking. They're not playing games. They genuinely want closeness. They might text you sweet things, talk about the future, initiate deep conversations, or express affection in a way that feels so open, so promising. That's the pull side of the cycle. They move toward love. But then, something shifts. It could be as simple as a partner saying, "I miss you," or suggesting a weekend getaway. Suddenly, the avoidant feels like they're losing control. Their vulnerability radar lights up, and without warning, even to themselves, they start to panic. The intimacy feels overwhelming, and instead of leaning in, they start pulling away. This is where the push kicks in. They may stop texting, seem emotionally flat, cancel plans, or throw a sudden criticism your way. Often they'll convince themselves that you're the problem, maybe we're moving too fast, they're too needy, or this isn't working. But what's really happening is that their nervous system is trying to escape what it perceives as emotional danger. Let's go back to Kayla. After her boyfriend told her he was falling for her, she started focusing on everything that could go wrong. She questioned whether he was really trustworthy. She started scanning for flaws. She even convinced herself she needed space to think. All of this wasn't about him, it was her fear of being vulnerable, of needing someone, and then being hurt. Here's the heartbreak of the push-pull cycle. It often makes the partner feel emotionally rejected, while the avoidant person feels misunderstood and ashamed. And the more the partner reaches out, trying to reconnect, the more the avoidant may retreat, feeling smothered instead of soothed. But underneath that reaction is usually a deep longing to stay connected. The push isn't a rejection of love, it's a survival instinct. That's what makes this dynamic so emotionally disorienting. You can want someone and fear them at the same time. You can feel safe and scared in the same relationship. Understanding this pattern is key, not just to breaking it, but to moving towards secure love. Because when both people begin to name what's happening, slow the emotional reactions, and learn to tolerate closeness in manageable doses, the cycle doesn't have to keep repeating. This inner war can start to quiet down, not by avoiding love, but by learning how to stay present when it shows up. Another layer that makes the fearful avoidant experience so difficult is the shame and guilt cycle. And it's one most people don't see from the outside. On the surface, fearful avoidance can seem hot and cold, unpredictable, or even emotionally withholding. But beneath that behavior is often someone who feels deeply, gives too much too soon, and struggles to ask for what they really need. And when those needs remain unmet, things begin to spiral. You see, many fearful avoidants grow up believing that their needs are too much, or that expressing emotion will lead to rejection, criticism, or abandonment. So instead of speaking up saying, "I'm feeling anxious," or "I'd really appreciate more reassurance," they stay silent. They bottle it up. They try to earn love instead of receiving it naturally. This often shows up as overgiving, doing more than they comfortably can, anticipating others' needs, and absorbing emotional tension to keep the peace. At first, this can make them seem incredibly generous or easygoing, but over time, that unspoken self-sacrifice builds resentment. They start to feel unappreciated or emotionally invisible. And because they haven't learned how to express those feelings in a secure, direct way, it all comes out in a wave through withdrawal, criticism, or a sudden outburst that seems to come from nowhere. Let me give you an example. Alex, a man I worked with, always tried to be the strong one in his relationship. He never asked for help. He always checked in on his partner's needs but minimized his own. Over time, this imbalance made him feel emotionally starved. One night, after a small disagreement, he lashed out, accusing his partner of being selfish, even though she had no idea how much he'd been holding in. The next day, Alex felt ashamed. He apologized profusely, but inside, he carried guilt that was deeper than the argument itself. He wasn't just sorry for the words, he was ashamed of how he'd lost control, how needy he had felt, and how much he hated himself for showing it. This is the painful loop: give too much, suppress your needs, feel resentment, lash out or withdraw, feel shame, repeat. And with every round, the avoidant person feels more emotionally unsafe, not just with others, but with themselves. What's important to understand is that this shame doesn't mean they're bad people. It means they were never taught how to relate to their own emotions in a healthy, self-compassionate way. They confuse boundaries with rejection, needs with weakness, and vulnerability with danger. So when they do explode or retreat, it's often followed by intense guilt and confusion. Why did I do that? Why can't I stay steady? Why am I like this? Healing this cycle starts with self-awareness and small, honest moments of self-expression. It's about learning that you don't have to overfunction to be loved, and that expressing needs doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. For partners of fearful avoidance, it's also about understanding that when they lash out, it's rarely about you, it's about the internal pressure that's been boiling beneath the surface for days, weeks, or even years. And breaking that cycle is possible, but it starts with understanding the emotional cost of silence and how shame thrives when needs are buried instead of spoken. One of the most emotionally draining patterns for someone with a fearful avoidant attachment style is how they assign personal meaning to emotionally neutral situations, a process often called emotional storytelling or personalization. This is when a simple moment, like someone taking longer than usual to reply to a message, becomes a trigger that spirals into a full-blown narrative of rejection, abandonment, or betrayal. For a fearful avoidant, these interpretations don't feel irrational. They feel real, because the emotional pain they're reacting to isn't just from this moment, it's connected to wounds from long ago. That one unread text becomes, "They don't care," which becomes, "I always get left," which quietly turns into, "I'm not lovable unless I stay one step ahead." It's not about what's actually happening. It's about what that moment represents to their nervous system and emotional memory. Here's an example. Julia, someone I worked with who identified as fearful avoidant, had just started dating someone she really liked. Things were going well, lots of connection, mutual values, regular conversations. But one weekend, her partner was traveling and didn't respond to her texts as quickly. Rather than reminding herself that this person had always shown up consistently, Julia's thoughts went straight into panic. He's pulling away. He probably realized I'm too much. This always happens. I let someone in and they leave. From that spiral, Julia withdrew emotionally. She stopped responding as quickly, avoided calls, and convinced herself she needed to protect her heart. When her partner did reach out and explained that he'd been out of signal range and missed her, Julia felt embarrassed, but more than that, she felt confused. Why did her mind jump so quickly to abandonment? Why did her fear feel so much stronger than the reality? This is emotional storytelling in action. And it's not manipulation. It's not attention-seeking. It's a protective reflex, usually rooted in early attachment wounds. Fearful avoidants are often children who were disappointed, neglected, or emotionally misattuned to key moments, so their brains learned to anticipate pain before it happens. It's a survival strategy that says, if I expect it, it won't hurt as much. But here's the catch. Emotional storytelling becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you constantly brace for abandonment, you might emotionally detach first. If you assume you're being rejected, you might start acting distant or critical, which only creates the disconnection you feared. It's a pattern that reinforces itself over and over again, unless it's interrupted. So how do you begin to shift it? Start by practicing pause and check-in moments. When you notice yourself spiraling into meaning, "They're ignoring me, they're losing interest," stop. Ask yourself, what do I actually know to be true right now? And is there another explanation that doesn't involve personal failure or rejection? It also helps to label the emotion. Instead of reacting to "they haven't texted back," name what's actually happening. "I feel anxious because I care about them. I'm afraid of being hurt." That honest naming softens the emotional charge and helps bring your mind back to reality rather than a storyline written by fear. Over time, this practice helps you separate past wounds from present relationships. It teaches your brain that not every delay, silence, or mistake is a sign of abandonment. It gives your relationships the chance to unfold on their own terms instead of constantly trying to outrun the ghost of what you've already survived. And remember, your fear is understandable, but not always accurate. Emotional storytelling is just that, a story, and you have the power to rewrite it. What makes the fearful avoidant experience especially hard to live with is the constant confusion and exhaustion it creates, not just for their partner, but for the avoidant person themselves. Many fearful avoidants live in a near constant state of inner turmoil. They don't wake up trying to push people away. They don't want to ruin good relationships, but they're stuck in a cycle that feels impossible to escape, wanting love, fearing love, sabotaging love, and then blaming themselves for doing it again. This contradiction can feel maddening. Imagine feeling deeply connected to someone one day and the next, waking up overwhelmed, panicked, and unsure if you can trust the connection at all. That's not drama, it's dysregulation. It's what happens when the very thing you crave, emotional intimacy, feels like both a gift and a threat. The nervous system is constantly flipping between fight, flight, or freeze. And that's not just emotionally exhausting, it's physically draining. Take Evan, for example. He had finally started dating someone who felt different. She was kind, consistent, and genuinely interested in getting to know him without judgment. At first, he felt hopeful. But as they grew closer, he started feeling out of control. The comfort scared him. He found himself overanalyzing texts, picking fights over small things, and suddenly needing space when the relationship felt too good. After these episodes, he would lie awake at night, feeling guilty and confused. Why did I do that again? Why do I mess it up when I care the most? This kind of emotional chaos isn't just a side effect of being fearful avoidant, it is the core experience. These individuals often feel like they're carrying a secret burden, one they don't fully understand themselves. They might look put together on the outside, but internally, they're fighting to balance opposing forces, the part that wants connection and the part that's terrified of it. And because they're aware of their patterns, many fearful avoidants live with a deep sense of shame. They know their reactions are hurting their relationships, but they don't know how to stop. They're afraid of being abandoned and afraid of being seen too clearly. So they stay stuck in a cycle: connect, panic, retreat, repeat. And with each round, they grow more tired, more disoriented, and more convinced that maybe they just aren't capable of safe love. But here's the truth: they are. Fearful avoidants aren't broken, they're just wired for survival. And when that wiring begins to shift through self-awareness, emotional safety, and support, their confusion can give way to clarity. The cycle doesn't have to define them forever. Recognizing the internal exhaustion is the first step toward healing. Because when you understand that your push-pull pattern isn't a character flaw but a trauma response, you stop shaming yourself for struggling and start building the emotional tools to feel safe staying close. That's where real change begins. Healing as a fearful avoidant doesn't start with trying to become the perfect partner. It starts with going inward, understanding your patterns, gently challenging your defenses, and relearning what emotional safety actually feels like. That process isn't quick, but it's powerful. And it's not about fixing yourself, it's about reprogramming the beliefs that taught you love equals loss or vulnerability equals danger. One of the most important parts of healing is learning to recognize and express emotional needs not after you've reached a breaking point, but in small, honest ways before overwhelm sets in. Fearful avoidants often wait too long, trying to stay low maintenance, but love can't thrive in silence. Saying, "I'm feeling overwhelmed, can we slow down a little?" Or "I'd like more connection this week. How do you feel about that?" Those small truths help build trust with yourself and with your partner. You also need to develop real self-soothing strategies. Not numbing through distraction, but tuning into your body, your breath, and your triggers. It's about creating internal safety so that when your nervous system says run, you can pause and ask, is this an old fear or a real threat? That's how you stop reacting and start responding. And maybe most importantly, stop waiting for someone else to regulate your sense of security. You can't outsource healing, but you can create a relationship with yourself that feels stable enough to stop self-abandoning every time things get real. This is what healing fearful avoidance looks like, not perfection, but progress. And every moment you choose self-awareness over self-protection, that's a win. Let's wrap this with what matters most: hope, rooted in truth. Being a fearful avoidant can feel like living in a constant tug-of-war between your heart and your fear. You crave intimacy, but it feels unsafe. You long to be loved, but brace for betrayal. You give too much, then pull away. And afterward you're left asking, what's wrong with me? But here's what I want you to hear loud and clear: there is nothing wrong with you. Your patterns didn't appear out of nowhere, they were learned through experiences that taught you love was unpredictable, unsafe, or conditional. But just as these patterns were learned, they can be unlearned. Healing isn't a destination, it's a daily practice. One that starts with awareness, deepens with compassion, and is sustained through courage and consistency. In this video, we unpacked some of the hardest truths about being fearful avoidant: the push-pull dynamic, the shame that follows conflict, the personalization of silence, the inner exhaustion from constant emotional contradiction. We explored how self-soothing, boundary setting, honest communication, and nervous system regulation can begin to break the cycle. And most importantly, we reminded you, this is not a life sentence. You are capable of becoming more secure, of showing up with clarity instead of fear, of allowing love to stay and trusting that it won't cost you your selfhood. So thank you for watching. If this spoke to you, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment to share your thoughts or experience. I read every single one because healing doesn't happen alone, it happens in community. And always remember, healing isn't about becoming someone else, it's about becoming more of who you were before fear taught you to run from love. You're worthy of a connection that feels safe, mutual, and lasting. Let's keep walking this journey together. I'm Jim Rohn, see you in the next one.